Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a rant video for you. Oh boy, those are always fun. Today I'm going to talk about why I'm not going to buy the 2021 run of the new Bachmann K4s. I have two main points, and I'll address them, hopefully clearly as we go along. But yeah, so the news is basically that Bachmann announced they're going to make a new run of these K4s. Hopefully by the end of 2021, maybe, because these days everything is delayed, maybe 2022, but they're making a new run of these K4s. And there's multiple reasons for why I'm not going to get one. Besides the fact that I already have 5 K4s, so I don't need another one. But besides the fact of that, if given I was in the market for a K4, I would not buy a new Bachmann K4. And so here's the reasons why. Okay, first off, Bachmann is rather infamous for not improving their tooling for engines. So if they re-release an engine, you can almost bet your ass that it's basically going to be the same engine. Maybe some minor improvements, like for example, the new run I would expect probably a brighter LED for the headlights, maybe a better paint, because they painted these K4s black, and it should technically be a Brunswick green or a DGLE. Maybe they'll fix that. Maybe they'll paint the cab and deck actually to the right colors, which should be 50/50 freight car color and black. That's the mix of this, and this should be just freight car color. Maybe they'll fix the paint there. As I said, so the paint, the headlight, they're definitely adding TCS Wowsun to their new engines. That was announced. But besides that, I don't see them, improving, for example, the detail, the separately applied, piping. I don't see them improving the drive, the mechanism, which already is actually fairly solid. But I don't see them improving anything besides just, the easy stuff like the electronics and the paint. And the problem with that is these are not very accurate per se. Don't get me wrong, these are nice looking engines and they can be made to look really nice. However, fundamentally, they're quite lacking in details. In fact, the pre-war one is actually half decent. I'm not going to actually complain about too much about this one, but the post-war one is the one that really has a lot of problems. So I'll quickly go through some of them. There's a whole list of them, but I'll say the main ones. First off, it's missing a whole lot of the piping. I added a whole bunch of separately applied piping, which you will not see if you buy one of these. Also the fact that they use the wire they use for the piping is too thin, so I actually replaced a lot of the piping with thicker wires in order to make it look more right. But anyways, it's missing a whole lot of this piping stuff here. A second major issue is the tender. So if you guys didn't know, Bachmann's, however they designed their K4s, they used an as-built, basically, blueprint to make their K4s. And so what that means is they used an as-built or as-delivered K4 tender, which is a 11,000 gallon tender. As the K4s are coming out. Now, if you guys didn't know, Pennsylvania Railroad quickly modified these tenders into the later kind of 11,000 gallon tender, which the MTH and BLIs both have. They're actually pretty obvious if you look at it. Once you know the difference, they're really obvious. You can easily tell which one's which. The later version, which by the way they modified really quickly, like right after the K4s were produced in like 1930s or something like that. I don't have an exact date, but basically the as-built tenders were very uncommon. They were quickly phased out. Anyways, so the modified tender has basically a smaller tender deck and a larger coal load. It also has some different rivets, but this is the as-built tender, which has a much longer tender deck and a smaller coal load, and the rivet patterns are a bit different. But those are the kind of the telling features. But basically, this is an as-built tender, which is fine on the pre-war K4 because, again, the pre-war K4 is kind of how they looked for the first half of their life, But the post-war K4, which should be modernized, they were modernized around 1947, 46-ish. That's how you see the post-war. So this engine is basically 1947 and 1946, 1947 afterwards. Any time period after 1946. But the tender is like a 1920 style tender, and that's the issue with the post-war engine. They used a wrong tender for the engine, and obviously, knowing Bachmann, they're not going to make a new tender for their new run of K4s. So there's going to be that issue. It has the pilot sticks out a bit too much. And, there's a whole bunch of other smaller ones, like it's missing the mechanical lubricator right here. But I digress. Basically, the details are not amazing. And for the price that they originally were at, which these days, back then, these were sold DCC ready for about $89, $99. I got this one actually from Train World about 10 years ago for $89. And that was rather reasonable. $400, this is pretty solid. These engines cost like $275 and $250 around there, used. maybe a little bit more new on eBay. And so for $100, you know, for half the price, granted no DCC sound, but for around half the price, a little more, you know, less than half the price, this is a pretty solid engine for the deal. Also, real quick, there's also missing the wrong marker lights. These are the modernized ones. They came with the pre-war marker lights. Anyways, so for the price, these are pretty solid. And so that's why I argued for these engines during my K4 comparison video, which you guys check out if you haven't seen it yet. But these engines for the price are really solid. They, you know, they run great and they're good value. But you know, this leads me to my second point of why I'm not getting the new run. These engines are priced at ridiculous prices. Bachmann's MSRP for the new run of engines is $550. Now, we know that Bachmann MSRPs are ridiculous always, but $550, that is way more than the BLI or MTH MSRPs for their K4s. I think MTH had the MSRP at $399 or maybe $499 for their K4, and BLI's was probably also around the same. But for $550, you gotta understand, these are comparatively value line for compared to those. The people who are not buying BLI and or MTH K4s is buying Bachmann because of the value. So when you have the MSRP so high, it's just not right. Now that being said, obviously most retailers have a pretty heavy discount on Bachmann engines because the MSRPs are ridiculous. And so I looked at the top two, in my opinion, the top two online retailers, which is Trainworld and Model Train Stuff. And the Trainworld has listed them for $320, and Model Train Stuff has listed them for $318, so about the same. That is still a terrible deal. I mean, still for $300 you can get either of these logos practically, I think. You know, even new on eBay is maybe a little bit more, but it's well worth it. In most cases, it's cheaper to get a BLI or MTH model, which is much better in detail. It's better in detail, they run great, and they have, you know, pretty decent sound. The Bachmann ones, even though they added TCS Wow Sound and Keep Alive, it's still not worth $330. You know, given that this I bought 10 years ago for $90, even including inflation, that's like, say, $130 for DCC ready, plus TCS Wow Sound, which adds around $100 in value, that's $230. Add a bit more tax, maybe $250. Like, $250 is a pretty solid, I think it's a pretty good number for a TCS Wow Sound equipped Bachmann K4 at 2021 value. 2021, you know, prices. But for $330, that is ridiculous. That is so much more than what it's worth. And that's the main problem with these K4s. It's just that they're too expensive. I don't know. You know, when you're in that price range, you expect a high-end model. You expect something that's better than BLI or MTH, or around the same. But these are fundamentally economy engines. They're solid, don't get me wrong, but they're clearly not to the same level of, you know, detail and finesse as the top manufacturers. In fact, for $330, you can buy a PFM United brass K4, which are, you know, amazing, and paint it yourself and then add DCC sound, and it will still be cheaper than $330. You can get the brass engines for about $250 these days on eBay. They have more detail, obviously, than the Bachmann ones. And, I mean, yeah, they're solid engines. You add DCC sound, you add a CAN motor, it'll bring you to about $300. No, a little more than that, say $350. But still, my point being is, it's about the same. When you're in brass territory for prices, you expect more. You don't expect this, you know, really low quality, or not low quality, but low detail, low level of detail, you know, type of engine. And so, anyways, that is my opinion on it. Why I'm not buying one. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy one, although I'm implying that you shouldn't. But, you know, ultimately it's your money, so you make your own decisions. However, I personally don't think it's worthwhile to buy one of these new Bachmann K4s. I think their prices need to drop to about $250. In order for it to be worthwhile, and even so, I would still prefer to get a BLI or MTH model. But yeah, those are my opinions. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have a counter argument, I would love to hear it down in the comments. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.